Okay, good to welcome everyone. Welcome back to a really intensive night of Daf Yomi. What an amazing way to start the new week. You know, Hashem takes into account that people could be sitting back, putting their feet up, doing something very light, and instead they come to learn too difficult daf of Gemara. This is the stuff of Nitzchias. This is the stuff of eternity. So bravo to all of you. Before I even begin, I want to acknowledge Shimon Klein, Mel Zachter, Rabbi Kaniel, Yisrael Fisher, Dr. Black, Yaakov Warman, Rabbi Kranz, Saba, Irving Fishbaum, Ben Zion Cohn, Menachem Umansky, Barry Cement, A.B. Spry, Eddie Chazan, Elia Yaffe, Yitzi Fuchs, Barish, Marshall Castle and his intrepid son, and Menachem Chapler, and Daniel Rosenberg, Moshe Lehman, Stephen Holtzman, Danny Vogel, Chaim Braun, Ilya Shutman, Shelley Zeitman, Richard Rosenzweig, Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg, who just came in. David Helf got rounding us off to 30 Zoomers. We have here in the shul Berish Gesserman, Michal Avram Shavin, and Ruvain Shanit to hold down the fort. Now I want to give you a little bit of an important preface. This is a Shas idea, which will serve us well. It doesn't happen often that we encounter this, but I'm sure many of you wonder, what's the difference between something that's written outright in the Torah and something that we derive from the 13 principles, like a Kal V'Chomer, like a Binyan Av? So this is true by some of them, but not by all of them. Something that we learn that's written in the Torah, we can then take that and learn it to somewhere else via a Kal V'Chomer, a Binyan Av, a Mahatzad. We could use the 13 principles. But sometimes something that we learn with the 13 principles, we cannot in turn learn it to somewhere else, again with the 13 principles. In other words, then there's a one-time rule. So that makes a very big difference. If you learn something out from the Chumash, then you could use a Kal V'Chomer, and it's not limited. But something that we learn out from a Kal V'Chomer, the buck stops there, and you can't learn it out further. Now we're going to see that this makes a very big difference. Be patient.
They're both considered Doraisa at the same level?
They're both considered Doraisa. They're both considered Doraisa.
But it's a higher level of Doraisa directly from the Chumash.
Don't put words in my mouth.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's not a higher level. I told you that there's a derivative differences. In other words, to make extrapolations, there's a difference. It's not a higher level. It's also, Halacha l'Moshe Misinai is also Misinai. It's not a higher level. Let's understand that. Now, it was a very pleasant evening, the first daf, right? I just wanted to see if you were awake. He picked it up, mamish, right away.
My mommy didn't give birth to no fool.
Now,
You don't know what you missed.
now,
I gotta review it, but I will.
so says the Gemara, we said that we learn out the Sar of Yom HaKippurim from Seirei Avodas Kechavim. Now, how do we know the din of Es Badam and V'Toval by Sar of Avodas Kechavim? So, we learn it out One second. Let's just follow the trail over here. We know the 3 laws of S, the blister on the finger, Badam, that you need the full amount before you dip in, and Vitava, that you have to dip it and not sponge it from the wall. It never says it by the Sar of Avodah Zarah. We learn it out because of a hekesh that it's in the same parsha as the power of the Kohen Mashiach, the power of the Kohen Gadol. So that means that we learn it from a hekesh. And now we want to use a kal v'chomer from that, right? To say a kal v'chomer, that since the Sar of Yom Kippurim is hushvu as the same as the Sar of Avodah Zarah, it's the same carbon, so it should be hushvu b'maisim. So that was a kal v'chomer. Asks the Gemara, 4 lines from the top of Mem Aleph Amud Aleph, v'chi davar alamed behekesh, which is one of the 13 principles, chayzer or malamed b'kal v'chomer. Can you learn it afterwards utilizing the kal v'chomer, which is another one of the 13 principles? Amar Rav Papa, yes. Because Savar Tana Debei Rabbi Yishmael, and remember the Tana Debei Rabbi Yishmael is the one that taught us the 13 derivatives. So, because Savar Tana Debei Rabbi Yishmael, that Davar Alamed Be'ek is something that's derived through proximity, through juxtaposition. Chayzer Malamed B'kal v'chomer. Oh, that's there's a sefer called Yad Malachi. It's a sefer that's only in a very, very chashuv library. But the sefer Yad Malachi carries many of the principles of Shas from all over Shas. So this is a principle that would be in the Yad Malachi. That's something that is learned out from a hekesh. You could then derive and extrapolate further with a kal v'chomer. We're going to see shortly that something that's learned from a hekesh you cannot transfer with another hekesh. That you can't do. As the Gemara continues now, as we're by the 2 dots, lepar. What do you do with lepar? Zepar helam davar shel tzibur. That comes to include the par of when Beis Din makes an erroneous decision and the majority of Klal Yisrael sins. Says the Gemara, but it says lepar in the parsha of par helam davar shel tzibur. So why does it have to say lepar there? Habet tzibur gufei ksiv. The parsha is talking about par helam davar shel tzibur. Why does it have to say an extra lepar? You know why? Amra Papa Mishim Deboy Agmure Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibur, because we want to learn out. You see, we know that part of the procedure is we have to smoke up on the altar the sacrificial portions of the diaphragm, the 2 kidneys, and the fat. Now, it doesn't say that by the Sar of the Avodah Zarah. And we're going to learn it out from the Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibur. Now, by the Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibur, it also doesn't say it. We learn it out because it's in juxtaposition to the Par Kohen Mashiach. So that means that we learn it out, the burning of the sacrificial portions, to a hekesh. Now you're going to want to transfer it to the Sar of Avodas Kechavim also with a hekesh. But you can't do that because something you learn out from a hekesh you can't transfer with a second hekesh. Therefore it says lepar that it should be as if it was written expressly. Let's see it inside. Amra Papa Mishim Boy Agmure Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibur. It wants to teach Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibur b'yoseres u'shtei kloyes, that you smoke up the diaphragm and the kidneys. L'seirei avodas kechavim. We want to teach from the par helm dover to the sar of idolatry. But a par helm dover shel tzibur begufei like ksiv. Even by the par helm dover, it doesn't say the smoking up of the sacrificial portions. Behekesh asi. We learn it out from a hekesh of the par kohen gadol. And now we're going to want to learn a further hekesh to the sar of avodah zarah. That you can't do because something you learn from a hekesh you can't transfer with another hekesh. So itzrich lepar lavahave demand the ksivbei begufei. The extra word lepar makes it a beferish pasuk. So then you could transfer it to the sar of avodah zarah. Because otherwise, it shouldn't be something that you learn with a hekesh that you want to transfer with a hekesh. That is not allowed to be done. Mark that up for the Yad Malachi also. That something you learn out from a hekesh cannot be transferred with a second hekesh. Tanya Kavase de Rapapa. Now this, by the way, this Gemara is not a walk in the park. That's why Eddie shows up even from Cuba or wherever. Actually, I'd never had somebody in Cuba. I had people that were from Cuba. A.B. Spry, if he remembers, by my shir in the Aguda, there was a man there, Benno, who very fine man, Benno, who was from Cuba. But anyway, Tanya Kavasa Rapapa. We have a brisa like Rapapa. It says by the Parelim Davashil Tzibur, V'asa Kasher Asa, you should do it like you do the par of the Kohen Mashiach. Matom Par. Why does it have to say Lapar? Because it says they bring their offering, a fire offering to Hashem, and we say that in the pasuk of Parahel Davashil Tzibur it says Chatosam Elu Seirei Avodas Kechav. That's the Sar of Avodah Zarah. Shigigasam Zeh Parahel Davashil Tzibur. Chatosam al shigigasam. We learn out that Amra Torah Chatosam, the sar of Avodah Zarah of the community, should be like shigigasam, should be like the Parahel Davashil Tzibur, as we said that you smoke up the sacrificial portions, the kidneys, the diaphragm. Now shigigasam heichan lamad. But even the Parahel Davashil Tzibur, how do I know it? Loi behekesha. We know it from a hekesh, a juxtaposition from the Par Kohen Gadol. But then we're learning something that we learn out from a hekesh. Can we transfer second generation with another hekesh? Talmud Laima. That's why it says lapar, that extra word. Zeh Parahel Davashil Tzibur, making it as if it says it outright, the smoking up of the kidneys and the lobe of liver. And Lipar, Zeh Par Kohen Mashiach, that comes to tell me the Par Kohen Mashiach. But once it's written beferish, then you could use a hekesh to learn it out to the Sar of Avodah Zarah. Now, Amamar, Chatosam Elu Seirei Avodas Kechav. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. Why do I need another pasuk? Teifik le Mikra Kama. From the earlier pasuk in the Parsha Parahel Davashil Tzibur, the Amamar, the extra hachatas Elu Seirei Avodas Kechav. So why do I need two psukim for the Sar of Avodah Zarah? Amar Papa, it's Sokadai Tachamina. I might say that when we make the comparison, I might say it's only Hani Mili Hazois Diksivim Begufei. I might say that it only applies to the blood applications. That the blood application should be the same and should be ma'akev by the Sar of Avodah Zarah, the same as by the Parahel Davashil Tzibur. However, the Yoseres HaKavod and the Shtei Klayas, of the Yoseres HaKavod and Shtei Klayas, the Loik Sivon Begufe, that's not written outright, as we said, we learn it out only from the word Lapar, Eimaloi, I might say that we don't make the juxtaposition, Kamash Malon, that we juxtapose the Sar, the communal goat of Avodah Zarah, even for the smoking up of the diaphragm, or what used to be called the lobe of the liver, and the kidneys. Okay, just getting underway on a beautiful Matzah Shabbos as we learn some highly cryptic Gemara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehakol niyeh b'dvaro. Now, if you remember, initially we said that when it says the par, that when it says lepar, it comes to include the par Yom HaKippurim, and we thought that it meant to include everything. But we asked, we don't need everything, because we know from other places that you have to, it's ma'akiv. So we said it's coming only to tell me the dinim of S, the extra dinim that if there's a blister on the hand, it's good. If you need to have all the blood in the clay shards before you dip, and that you can't sponge it. But it doesn't say that in the lashon of the Brisa. Amalei Rav Huna Brei de Rav Nasan Rav Papa V'atana Par Yom HaKippurim. It refers to the Par Yom HaKippurim to tell you L'kol Masha Amar Ba'inyan, that it applies everything that's said by the Par Kohen Gadol. So it seems to be we're learning out everything. L'kol Masha Amar Ba'inyan Kama. So the Gemara says, you're right, it's a machlokes. Tanoi, Tana Debei Rav, the Tana Debei Rav Marbi Hachi, learns that we learn out everything. Tana Debei Rabbi Shmuel Loi Marbi Hachi learns that we only learn out Es Badam and V'Tava. So now the Gemara tells us a little piece of Agadata, gives us a break, a little piece of Agadata. Tana Debei Rabbi Shmuel Mipnei Ma. And this touches on a delicate question that maybe Michal Avram was alluding to, and Berish was alluding to. And that is, why does sometimes the Torah say something outright, and other times it uses the 13 principles? If they're all equally from Sinai, so why does it do it one time one way and one time another way? So the Gemara gives us a rare insight over here. Says the Gemara, Tana Debei Rabbi Shmuel, Mipnei Ma Nemru Yoseres Ushtei Kloyes B'Par Kohen Mashiach. Why does it teach outright the smoking up of the diaphragm and the two kidneys by the Par Kohen Mashiach? V'loi nema b'Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibur. And it doesn't say it by the Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibur, but the Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibur, we only learn it out with a hekish, a juxtaposition. So it says, you know why? Because these are karbanos that are brought on for sin. Says the Gemara, Mashal Melech Basav Adam, Shezam al Oyavoy. He got angry at his friend. He got angry at somebody that he loved. Umiet b'sirchainai, but he doesn't elaborate on his stink. Because he likes him. So the parallel in Davar Shel Tzibur is the community. The community. Rebbeinu Shalom loves the community. He loves Klal Yisrael as a whole. So therefore he doesn't go into the details. You're going to have to bring for your sin and smoke up kidneys and the lobe of the liver, and he learns it out from a hekesh. So not to be so garrulous, not to be so chatty about their sin. Okay. But now, Gemara says in the other direction. B'tana d'rei Rabbi Yishmael, and here, a lot of times somebody comes to a rabbi. It's interesting. I once heard a woman. There was a speaker. I was a child, and there was a chashuv rabbi gave a perik shir on the lawn, and a woman came over to him and asked him a very textual question. It was giving a list, and by all of them it said v, and by one of them it says u. And she asked him why by all of them it says v, and by one of them it says u. So he told her, I don't know. I could look into it, I don't know. And I remembered as a little child, the woman said, you're a rabbi and you don't know? And it's important to know that the Torah is so vast that there's nothing wrong with not knowing something, especially something so technical like that. That's why I said many times the Gemara tells us they asked this big scholar, and the Gemara says, Lo hava biyadei. He didn't know. Do we have to know that? Do we have to embarrass him that he came to a town and they converged on him to ask their questions? Lo hava biyadei. And here they asked him 3 questions. He didn't know any of them. Lo hava biyadei. Why do we have to know his embarrassment? But we have to know that even the greatest rabbis, number one, are not expected to know everything. And number 2, that they're big enough to say, I don't know. That's another Gemara. The Gemara says, Lameid l'shayncha loimer eini yodea. Train yourself to say, I don't know. By the way, I want you to know that this is one of my biggest talents. I can say, I don't know. I can say it. Very talented. I can say, I don't know. I know that there's a lot that I don't know. Eddie's smiling. But Eddie, it's a big talent. Not everybody can do that.
I know nothing.
I'm sorry, Rabbi. In general, isn't it brought down that if a Rav is speaking on a topic, to ask him a question on another Gemara is not appropriate?
That is correct. That is correct. But then there are people who travel to other towns, and their job was to try to. They didn't have sources. So they traveled to other towns, and these towns gathered their questions for these people. And if they didn't know, so they went to the think tank and they asked the think tank. That's what they did. Okay. So listen to the next one. The Tana d'rei Rabbi Yishmael, Mipnei ma nemra. I mentioned this story. It reminded me of this story. Made such an impression on me as a little boy. As a little boy, I knew that what this woman was saying was so wrong. I knew what you expect everybody to know everything. I knew it even as a little boy. So here's a question that nobody is going to know offhand. But by the Parkain Mashiach, it says that the blood is sprayed against the Paroiches HaKodesh, the holy Paroiches that separates the Kodesh and the Kodesh Kadosh. So, Mipnei ma nemra b'Paroiches HaKodesh b'Parkain Mashiach, v'loi nema b'Par Elam Davar Shel Tzibur. But by the Par Elam Davar Shel Tzibur, if you look at the pasuk, the blood is also sprinkled against the Paroiches. But there it just says against the Paroiches. It doesn't say Paroiches HaKodesh. So how come? It was the same Paroiches HaKodesh. How come by the Parkain Mashiach it says it's against the Paroiches HaKodesh, and the Par Elam Davar Shel Tzibur for the erroneous mistake of Bezdin, there it doesn't say Kodesh. So taka. So he says again, so he says, this can be compared to a human king, Shesarcha alav Medina, that a province sinned against him. So imi uta sarcha, if only the minority of the province sinned, palmalia shaloi miskayemes. His Senate, his cabinet doesn't disband. Imruba sircha, but if the majority sinned, ein palmalia shaloi miskayemes. In other words, this is a very loose, tangential comparison, but what it means is if it's only a minor infraction, so there isn't a uproar in the heavenly realm. But if the entire congregation or the majority of the congregation sin, there's an uproar in the heavenly realm, and the, so to speak, the Pamalia, Hashem's retinue, withdraws, because the Rebbeinu Shalom is a little distraught, and therefore it doesn't say Paraychas HaKodesh. It just says Paraychas, it doesn't say Paraychas HaKodesh. Now, B'Pashtus, we learned the Machlokes in the previous Mishnah about whether you're Mefagel B'Chatzi Mater, which means, if we need to pick somebody, let's pick somebody new. Marshall. It's not going to help you. If Marshall has in mind Pigel, when he offers from a mincha, there's two things that are put on the altar: the kmitza, the handful of the flour, and the levina, a handful of frankincense. If he has in mind when he offers the handful of flour that he's going to eat the mincha after its time, but he doesn't have it in mind when he offers the handful of levina, Rabbanan say it's not pigel, because the Rabbanan hold ein mefaglen b'chatzi mater. Can't make pigel on only half of the matter. The matter of the carbon, it only becomes permitted with the handful of flour and the frankincense. And the Rabbanan hold that ein mefaglen b'chatzi mater, a machshava pigel just in half, it doesn't render it pigel. Rameir says mefaglen b'chatzi mater. That's the simple machlokes, the Rabbanan and Rameir. Now that makes a difference also by the applications of blood, right? So that if you have a machshava by part of the applications, but not by all of them, so according to the Rabbanan, it won't be ma'akev, it won't be pigel, because it's a chatzi mater. According to a mayor, it will. That's the simple way of looking at it. So now let's see the Gemara inside. This Gemara keeps on going. It's really relentless almost. Lefikach, the Mishnah says, Im nasnu kulan ketikna. If you make all the applications properly, and the last one improperly, so it's puzzle, but be'ein bakaros. Now that would be because, like the Rabbanan, that ein mefagin mechatzi mater. Now Tanan Hasam, Gemara says pigel b'kaimeitz. If you did pigel, if Marshall did pigel on the handful of the flour, he had in mind that he was going to eat it after its time. V'loi balavayna, but not with the frankincense. Or balavayna v'loi b'kaimeitz. Rameir, who says that you can be mefagel with half a matter. Rameir, pigel v'chayav and olav kares. The Chacham say no, ain't by kares. Ad sheyafagel b'kol matter, until you're mefagel b'kol matter. So now the Gemara, this is Gemara. Now the Gemara says you're learning wrong pshat. The machlokes isn't whether you need a half a matter or a whole matter. Even Reb Meir agrees you need a whole matter. But Reb Meir holds that if when you do the kmitza, when Marshall does the kmitza, he has in mind to smoke it up, chutz l'zmanai. And then when he does the Levina, he's quiet. Reb Meir holds that's considered the whole matter. Because Reb Meir holds al das rishayna ha'isa. He does it with what he had in mind originally. And since originally he did it, having in mind to eat it chutz l'zmanai, when he did the flour and when he did the levine, he was quiet, we say that he had that in mind as well. Like he had by the flour, and therefore he had pigel by both. Don't say the reason of Reb Meir, the kesavim mefagin b'chatzi matter, that it's pigel even if you had the machshava only by half. Marshall did the kamitza flour and had in mind to eat it chutz l'zmanai, the mincha chutz l'zmanai. V'alavayna b'shtika, and he did the frankincense quietly. And Reb Meir holds kasavar kala isa al dash v'shayno isa. Whatever he did, he had in mind what he first thought. And therefore, since he did pigel with the first part, with the kamitza, and he was silent by levina, we say that that's pigel too. How do we know this? If he did all the applications properly, and one improperly, puzzle vein by cars. But that's only if he did it in that order, where he did all of them properly and one improperly. So since he doesn't have pigel by the whole matter, so there's no cars. But it implies the other way around. If he did the first one improperly, the rest of them properly, we would say pigel. Why? Because we will say that just since he did the first one improperly and all the other ones he did quietly, it's al das rishayna. Now mani. If it's going according to Rabbanan, it can't be going according to Rabbanan, because according to Rabbanan, you have to be mefagel with the whole matter. Because if it's going according to Rabbanan, the last, right, El Rameir. If the reason Rameir is because you can be mefagel with chatzi mater, then why does the Mishnah say only the case where he has in mind afilu k'dikatani nami, even where he had all of them right and one of them wrong, it should be pigel, because he holds that you can be mefagel b'chatzi mater. Rather, it must be that even Rameir holds that you can't be mefagel with chatzi mater. But if you have all of them right and the last one wrong, so it's only the last one. But if you did the first one wrong and you were quiet by all the other ones, then it would be considered as all is no good. Because kol ha'isa al das rishayno ha'isa. So Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak doesn't buy this. Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak, no. La'ilam Rabban. It's going according to the Rabban. Umay ketiknan. What does it mean that he did all of them ketiknan and the last one shaloi ketiknan? It means that he did all of them with a machshava of pigel. Ketiknan means ketikun pigel. But since he did the last one improperly, so therefore he didn't have a mind pigel with the whole matter, and therefore that's why it's puzzle and not pigel. Or my ketiknan the pigel. Says the Gemara, no. Then it should have said that he did v'kulan ketiknan, and the last one he didn't have anything in mind. That means that the first ones were all good. That's good. Amarava, no. Ketikna means that he did it all as pigel. And Shaloi Ketikna means that he did the last one with a machshav of chutzlas l'mekaymai, or Shaloi l'shma. And therefore that's why there's no pigel, because he didn't have pigel throughout the whole thing. My Shaloi Ketikna chutz l'mekaymai, or Ravashi am Shaloi l'shma. Says, well, but that's that doesn't work. Because if it's going according to Rabbanan, that applies that only if he had in mind in the last one for Chutza Mekaimai or Shalei L'Shmai. But if he had in mind the last one nothing, then it would be Karas. But according to Rabbanan, that's not true. Because according to Rabbanan, you need to be Mefagel with the whole matter. Mechlal Dechiloi Ovid Chutza Mekaimai Shalei L'Shmai Mechayev? So the Gemara says, you're right. At the end, even if he didn't have anything in mind, according to Rabbanan, it wouldn't be pigel, because you need to have the whole matter. But Aidi the Tana Reisha, since in the beginning of the Mishnah, it said that if the Kohen had a machshava of pigel in the first application, and then had in mind a machshava of chutz l'zmanai in the second application, it would be karis, because over there the second application is an essential pigel v'chayav and alav karis. So Tananami Sefer, it says in the Sefer, where he had by all of the applications except the last one a machshava of pigel, and the last one he had a machshava of chutz mekaimai. But Einochanami, by the necessary applications in the inside where they're all essential, even if the last one he had nothing in mind, it wouldn't be pigel, because according to Rabbanan it would only be a chatzi matter. Tani nami reisha pasel ve'ein ba'ikaris. I want to give you a little bit. This was very hard to follow. I want to give you a outside overview of what we just did. The pashtus all over Shas, we assume that the machlokes between the Rabbanan and the Rameir is the Rabbanan hold that in order for it to be pigel, you have to have pigel in the full matter. So, for example, where there's two parts, like by a mincha where there's the kmitz of flour and the kmitz of levina, in order for it to be pigel, you have to have a machshav of chutz l'zmanah by both. In our Mishnah too, in order for it to be pigel, you have to have a machshava of chutz l'zmanai in all of the applications of blood inside the kodesh, since they're all essential. Rameir holds that even if you have a machshava of pigel in just one part, like the kmitza, or just some of the blood, it's already pigel, because he holds you to be mefagel b'chatzi mat. The Gemara in Talmudic style says, well, how do you know that's the machlokes Rameir and Rabbanan? Remember, we don't assume more, we assume less. So in the way it works with analyzing the arguments of our Tanoim, if we could assume they're arguing in less, we don't assume that they're arguing in more. So therefore, it suggests to Gemara, maybe they're only arguing, maybe even Rameir holds that you can't be mefagel unless it's in all parts. You need the whole matter. But they're arguing in a specific case, where Marshall, as he always does, not muting himself, okay, Marshall, in his brilliance, does the kmitza with a machshava of chutz l'zmanah. And then he does the levina silently, without, he like a space cadet. So, the question is, do we assume that al das rishonahu, that he's doing it with his first thought by the kmitza flour? So the Rabbanan say no. He did the kmitza for pigel. He didn't do anything with the levina, so that's a chatzi matter, and it's not pigel. Rameir suggests the Gemara holds no. Al das rishonahu. He's doing it with that in mind. He's doing it since he did the kmitza, a flour, chutz l'zmanai, we assume that he did the kmitza of the Levine also chutz l'zmanai. So then that's a whole matter. But we have no raya that Rameir holds that you could be mefaga with a chatzi matter. The Gemara tried to bring a proof from our Mishnah, but the Gemara deflected the proof from our Mishnah. So we, as yet, do not have a proof what the machlokes of Rameir and Rabbanan really is. I want to say that the Olam really was very patient tonight. It wasn't an easy Gemara. Rabbi Kranz, you have a question?
Yes, I actually do.
Okay.
The Kmitza...
Time's up. Yeah, what?
The Kmitza and the Levona, that's considered one avoda?
Yes.
Okay, then I have no more question.
Yes, it's all part of one avodah.
Right, okay, because I thought we were comparing one avoda, and if you're silent for the next avoda...
No, it's one avodah.
That to me was
Right, it's one avodah.
Rabbi, I just wanted to add that Rashi, many times Rashi says, Ein Yodea.
That's correct. That's correct. That's correct. That's what's beautiful about Rashi.
This is all just a discussion.
What?
This is all just a discussion about the inner application, because on the outside, even just one is the matir, right?
Correct. This is only inner, because outside, once you do the first one, that was the Mishnah all the way in the beginning. Once you do the first one, the second one, even if you have a machshava pigel, it doesn't count.
Right.
On the other hand, if on the first one you have a machshava pigel, and then on the second one you have a machshava chutz mekayim, it still stays an isser pigel, because the second machshava in the second one doesn't affect it.
Got it.
Barish, you wanted to ask something?
My question, the Matan Abba Minayan, the distinction was this is going on the inside, because if I remember, you only needed one, but that was the outside.
No, that's outside.
So
this is the inside.
This is the inside.
Inside, everything in the inside, im chiser achas mehem ma'akiv. Every one of the matanas on the inside, there is a machlokes. Then later, they put the shirayim to the yisoid. And there, that's already an outside. So the Rabbanan hold, that's not ma'akiv, even by on Yom Kippur. Reb Nechemya argues, and Reb Nechemya holds, that even the shirayim is ma'akiv. That's only Shitas Reb Nechemya.
You mentioned about that woman, remember, that she asked the rabbi a question. Mandy had a situation one time, there was a substitute at elementary school. Kid asked him a gewaltige question. So he told him, you know what, I know the answer, but I'm not sure, I'm going to look into it, I'll let you know tomorrow. You know what he did? He went to Rab Mato and they both discussed it, and then he brought back the answer. But it's two kind of people asking questions. One, they don't understand. One, they want to embarrass the rabbi, see how smart the rabbi is.
Now that for sure is, that's what that's what Rabbi Yisrael was referring to in the Gemara, that when the rabbi is learning one Masechta, you're not supposed to ask him another. I used to have people who they would come to the shir and they would look through the Tosfos and ask Tosfos questions. So that's not something that a person should do. First of all, it's not fair to the rabbi. And second of all, there's not enough time in the Daf Yomi to handle that.